Hi, my name's Malis. I dropped out of school to work 2 jobs so my family wouldn't lose our home. 8 years, gone, in exchange for late night shifts, canceled dreams, and monthly deposits that kept their lights on. And then, one day, I tripped over a vase. It shattered. And so did the illusion. They told the neighbors I was just helping out. They told my niece I was the bad one. And then, they told me to leave. But that wasn't the worst part. What hurts more than being erased is realizing they'd planned it that way all along. So here's my question. How do you start over when your entire identity was built around keeping others afloat? And what happens when you finally stop paying for their silence? Would you stay to find out? I was standing in the kitchen, juggling a paper bag of groceries on one arm and a pile of overdue bills in the other, when I heard the crash. It wasn't loud, not dramatic, just a soft, shattering sound, like hope slipping off the edge of a table. My niece, Alette, gasped, too soft for anyone else to hear, and darted out of sight. I looked toward the living room and saw the vase on the floor. It had been my mother's pride, a hand-painted porcelain thing from some antique fair she dragged us to years ago. Before I could even move, I heard the footsteps. Dahlia, her heels against hardwood, sharp, final. She stepped into the room, her eyes going straight to the broken vase. Then to me. Not a word yet, just that look. The kind that makes your bones vibrate, not from fear, but from the sudden knowledge that something irreversible is about to happen. "I told you," she said coldly. "I told you not to touch my things." I shook my head. "Mom, I didn't—" Her voice cut like a cold knife. "Get out!" I blinked. "What?" "You heard me. Get out of my house." "Mom, please." You break things, you lie, and you think you can keep riding this train just because you've been paying a few bills? You're lucky we let you stay this long. Every part of me wanted to scream, but my voice got stuck somewhere between my chest and my mouth. I stood there, frozen, watching her bend down and start collecting the broken pieces. Not gently, not like someone cleaning up an accident, but like someone getting rid of the evidence. "Mom, it wasn't me. Alette." "Enough!" she snapped, straightening up and tossing the shards into the trash with a clatter. "Don't you dare blame a child for your carelessness." My backpack was still by the front door. I didn't even change. I just picked it up, zipped it shut with shaking fingers, and turned toward the hallway. Malcolm was standing there. My father. The man who used to help me with math homework and tell me bedtime stories when I had nightmares. He didn't say a word, didn't even look me in the eye. He just stood there, arms crossed, face unreadable. I waited for something, anything, a raised eyebrow, a sigh, a whisper of, "Let's talk about this later." But there was nothing. His silence spoke louder than Dahlia's rage. Upstairs, a door creaked open. Verity's voice floated down in a lazy drawl. "Everything okay?" Dahlia answered, "Your sister's leaving." A pause. Then Verity called out, "Okay, well, I guess I'll see you around, Malis." A moment later, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text. "Sorry, Mom's in one of her moods." I stepped out into the night without saying goodbye. The rain had started, a slow, steady drizzle, like the sky couldn't decide whether to cry or just hold it in. The cold soaked through my hoodie before I even reached the sidewalk. My hands were trembling, not from the weather, but from the weight of what just happened. 8 years of helping pay the mortgage, splitting grocery bills, skipping vacations, and working double shifts. 8 years of telling myself, they need me, every time I wanted to leave. And now it all ended with a vase. I walked until the streetlights blurred in my vision, blinking through rain and tears. At the corner, near the bus stop, I sat on the bench. No umbrella, no plan. Just me and the backpack I packed years ago for a trip I never took. My phone buzzed again. "Lorelei, you okay? Call me." I didn't answer. My fingers were too cold, too numb. I sat there, staring at the puddle forming at my feet, the reflection of headlights growing in it as the city bus approached. Everything around me was moving, yet I felt completely still, like someone had hit pause on my life. They were never going to love me unless I stayed silent. That sentence didn't come from pain. It came from clarity, from knowing that silence had been the price of my place in that house. And tonight, when I finally said something, when I dared to defend myself, they decided I was disposable. The bus hissed to a stop. I didn't think. I just stood and climbed aboard. The driver gave me a nod, barely glanced my way. I took a seat in the back, curled into the corner, dripping onto the vinyl seat. Out the window, the rain blurred the stop sign down the road. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone to come after me. I was just going. The bus rolled forward, leaving behind a trail of rain streaks and headlights that blurred into nothing. I didn't know where it was taking me. I just knew it was moving. And for the first time in a long time, so was I. As the wheels hummed beneath me, my mind drifted backward, uninvited, but inevitable. It started with a hallway, dimly lit and smelling like antiseptic. The day everything turned. I was 19. We were at Mercy Hospital. My dad had collapsed at work and had to be rushed into emergency care. I remember the coldness of the seat in the waiting area, the sound of the vending machine humming louder than anyone's voice. I had stepped away for a moment to catch my breath near the water fountain when I heard my mother's voice, low but sharp, just around the corner. "We can't afford to lose the house," she hissed, "and she's not a priority." There was a pause. Then Verity replied flatly, "I figured." I didn't make a sound. I couldn't. My feet froze to the floor. I was the she. Back then, I had just received a full-ride scholarship to a nursing program in Omaha. I hadn't told them yet. The letter was still sealed, tucked inside the front of my journal, waiting for the right moment. Turns out, there was never going to be one. Later that week, while Mom was out and the house was quiet, I opened it in my room. I read every line twice. "We are pleased to offer you a full scholarship." I ran my finger over the college crest, felt the edge of the paper shake under my breath. That night, I didn't sleep. I was finally going to be something other than the backup plan. I slipped the letter back into the journal and hid it in my drawer, behind a box of dried-out gel pens and old receipts. But 3 days later, it was gone. I searched everywhere, under my mattress, behind the dresser, even in the trash. Nothing. I confronted her in the kitchen, my mother. "I had a letter," I said. "An acceptance letter. You didn't see it, did you?" She was stirring a pot of spaghetti like it was any other Wednesday. She didn't look at me when she said, "This family doesn't have room for fantasy, Malis." Verity chimed in from the couch, eyes glued to her phone. "You should be grateful, you know. Most people your age would kill to have a roof over their head. And you want to leave?" I opened my mouth, but Dahlia spoke again. "There's no space for dreamers when bills are due." I wanted to scream, but all I managed was a whisper. It was a full ride. "You think food shows up in this fridge because you're off chasing dreams?" Her words landed like bricks. "You want to be a nurse? Then take care of your father. That's real work." I walked out of that kitchen with my fists clenched so tight, my nails left marks in my palms. 8 years passed. I became exactly what they wanted, working 2 jobs, never asking for anything. No degree, no title. Just Malis, the one who stayed, the one who paid. Now, in 2024, as I unpacked boxes in Lorelei's guest room, trying to make a temporary space feel like mine, she handed me an old photo album she found in a thrift store bin near our old neighborhood. She flipped through it slowly, pointing out faces I hadn't seen in years, faces I hadn't missed. Then we found it. A page near the back, yellowed and curling at the corners. On the bottom edge of a sonogram photo, in Dahlia's handwriting, "Unexpected. But I guess we'll keep her." Lorelei looked up at me, eyes gentle. She told me once, "You were never planned. I didn't know if she meant it literally or just emotionally. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I stepped outside. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that presses against your chest. I sat on the steps, letting my arms rest against my knees. No letter, no degree, no proof of the future I almost had. All this time, I thought I was overlooked. I didn't know I was never meant to be seen. The late afternoon light slipped through Lorelei's kitchen blinds, striping the walls like prison bars. I sat at the table with a half-empty mug of tea, trying to decide whether I felt angry or just tired. She came in holding a stack of envelopes and a folder from her car. "You should get your own account, Mai," she said. "No more running things through your mom." I nodded slowly. It sounded so simple. Logical. But logic never held much weight in my family. Emotions did. Image did. We went to the bank the next morning. It was one of those small branches with floral wallpaper and polite tellers who pretend they're not judging your balance. I handed over my ID. The woman behind the counter gave me a familiar smile. "Oh, Strickland! Are you Verity's sister?" I hesitated. "Yes." Her tone shifted to something brighter. "She's been banking with us for years. Lovely woman, always on top of things." I bit my tongue. Always on top of things. "Because I put her there." The teller pulled up a screen. "Actually, there's an existing account under the same household address. Want me to check if it's joint?" I frowned. "What account?" She tapped the keyboard. "It's listed under Verity, Emergency Fund. Been building since 2020? I didn't need to see the number. I already knew. Every month, for 3 years, I handed Mom envelopes labeled for household or college savings. A little over 11 grand. And it was in Verity's name. Not a joint account. Not even a mention of mine. "Sorry," the teller said. "Is everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, it's just a lot to take in." Later that evening, we were back at Lorelei's place. She tossed her keys on the counter and asked if I wanted to debrief or decompress. I didn't answer. I opened my bag, pulled out old folders, tax return copies, and a Ziploc bag filled with crumpled receipts. "You kept all this?" she asked quietly. "For years," I said. "Every paycheck I split. Every bill I covered. I thought it was temporary. I thought they'd make it right eventually." She sat across from me, flipping through paperwork, her eyes scanning quickly until she stopped at a line item. "Home Depot, roof patching material, $328.16. You paid for the roof." I was told it was urgent, that they'd reimburse me when they got the insurance check. They never did. The weight in the room shifted. There was no more pretending this was just miscommunication or forgetfulness. It was theft wrapped in guilt trips. Then came the memory I couldn't shake. 2 years ago. My grandmother Hester's funeral. I had sat by her bedside every night for months, spoon-feeding her broth, managing her meds, changing bedsheets. I missed entire weekends of rest because "You're the one she trusts," Mom had said. The day of the funeral, Dahlia stood at the front of the chapel, wearing black pearls and delivering the eulogy like a seasoned actress. Then came the will. She read it out loud in the living room later that evening, with the whole family sipping wine like it was Thanksgiving. "To Verity, my cherished granddaughter, I leave my necklace and savings. To Ronin, my firstborn, I leave the record player and photo albums. To Malcolm and Dahlia, thank you for everything." Silence. No mention of me. Not even a footnote. I looked at my dad. He shifted in his seat, cleared his throat, and poured more wine. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just walked outside, sat on the curb, and stared at the sky until the stars blurred into a single smear of light. Now, in Lorelei's living room, surrounded by paper proof of everything I had poured into a family that kept receipts only when it benefited them, I started to feel something I hadn't allowed in years. Resolve. "I need to start recording everything," I said, more to myself than to her. "Like, writing it down?" she asked. "No, I mean everything. Every dollar, every date, every lie. If they want to erase me, fine, but they're going to trip over my footprints when they try. Lorelei reached across the table and handed me an empty folder from her desk drawer. I grabbed a pen and wrote in bold, all caps, "Proof." Underneath it, in smaller print, I added, "This time, I'm the one keeping records." That evening, the photo slipped out from the back of the album and landed on the floor near my feet. I bent down, picked it up, and stared at Verity's face. Smiling, front and center, surrounded by our parents, Ronan, and even her boyfriend at the time. Me? I wasn't in it. I had been there. I remember the sweat in my shirt from rushing after work, the tightness in my calves from standing all day, and the weak smile I'd forced when I showed up with a congratulatory pie from the store bakery. I was there, but they'd framed me out like a stain. It was Verity's graduation party in 2019. One of those backyard boho chic setups with string lights, Pinterest food, and fake laughter that smelled like perfume and Chardonnay. When I arrived, Dahlia was already directing people like a wedding planner on steroids. Verity stood in a white wrap dress, holding a mimosa and posing like she was about to be discovered. I was still in my khakis and non-slip shoes from the diner. I hadn't even made it past the first cluster of folding chairs when I heard Mom's voice behind me. "Sweetie, we already got the group shot, but we'll get another with just you and Ver later, okay?" She didn't even look me in the eye. Just gently, efficiently, repositioned me out of the frame. I smiled like it was fine. Like being a background fixture had become comfortable. As the evening wore on, I watched from the corner while everyone toasted to Verity's future. The string lights flickered softly. Dahlia clinked her glass and launched into a speech she had definitely practiced. "We couldn't have done this without our incredible support system," she said, smiling like the mother of the bride. "To Malcolm for holding us steady. To Ronan for setting the bar so high. To Verity's boyfriend for being by her side. And of course, our brilliant Verity." That was it. No, and Milas, who worked weekends to help cover Verity's car lease. No, thank you for delivering groceries when I had surgery. Not even a generic. And to the whole family. It was surgical. I remember looking down at my feet, still in old sneakers soaked from spilled beer. I'd brought extra chairs from the garage, refilled the ice bucket twice, and washed all the dishes when people started to leave. But by midnight, I was still just the one who helped. Back at Lorelei's, I showed her the post from that night. Dahlia had captioned it, "Family is everything." The image was crisp, edited with filters, and tagged with dozens of compliments. What a beautiful moment! Y'all are picture perfect. I scrolled through the carousel of photos. I wasn't in a single one. Lorelei sat beside me, silent at first. Then she asked, "Do you ever cry about it?" I shook my head. "I used to. Then one day I realized I'm not sad. I'm just done." I turned the photo album toward her. "They treat me like a chair, Lore. Functional, movable, but never important." She didn't flinch. "You're not invisible, Malis. They just trained you to believe you are." I didn't say anything, but those words hit something raw. Not because they were new, but because they confirmed what I'd been trying not to accept. Later that night, I sat alone, scrolling through old digital albums stored on an external drive I hadn't touched in years. Events, holidays, birthdays. In every set, I was in the kitchen, behind the camera, or nowhere at all. Sometimes cropped out, sometimes not invited. They'd built a perfect record of a family I was never fully in. I stopped on one picture of Verity, her arms around Mom and Dad, the same pose over and over again, like a family portrait on repeat. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then slowly, I selected it and pressed delete. This time, I'll be the one who speaks at the celebration, even if the celebration is just me standing in my truth. I stared at my phone screen a long time after deleting the photo of Verity. It felt like I'd just erased a piece of myself that had never really belonged there. But before I could take my voice back, I knew I had to take something else first, my boundaries. And as strange as it sounds, it began with brunch. It was a warm Sunday in late May, about a year before the Vase. Verity had just gotten a promotion at the law firm she interned with, something Dahlia described as a sign the family legacy was alive and well. She organized a celebratory brunch in the backyard. White linens on the folding tables, mimosa pitchers, little signs stuck into mini quiches that read things like, "Success tastes better shared." I arrived late, as usual, fresh off a 12-hour overnight shift at the warehouse. Still smelled faintly of pallet dust and industrial soap. I brought groceries, fruit, bagels, orange juice, because I always did, even when they didn't ask. Especially when they didn't ask. Dahlia was at the grill, wearing an apron that said, CEO of Sunday. Verity flitted between guests like a hostess at a political fundraiser. I dropped the grocery bags by the kitchen door and went to sit. There were 2 tables, one under the shade where the adults were gathered, and another pushed out by the fence with plastic chairs and paper plates. I sat at the latter. That's where my name card was, scribbled in Sharpie. The kids eventually joined me, but I was already done eating by then. As people refilled their drinks, Ronan raised his glass and smirked. "If we ever go broke," he said loud enough for the whole group to hear, "we'll just borrow from Malis and her 2 jobs." Laughter rippled through the table. Then Malcolm, my father, the man who once taught me to ride a bike and now mostly nodded through conversations, added with a chuckle. "She might not have a degree, but she sure knows how to bring home a paycheck." Even Verity snorted. "Hey, everyone's got their strengths." I didn't laugh. I placed my fork down slowly and wiped my hands with a napkin. Then I stood, steadying my voice even though my heart was pounding in my ears. "If I'm just a paycheck," I said, scanning their faces, "then stop calling me family. Call me what I am, your investor." You could have heard a leaf fall. Dahlia turned around, spatula in hand, eyes narrow. "What's gotten into you?" Verity leaned back, scoffing. "Don't ruin the mood, Mai. You're always so sensitive." I nodded, more to myself than anyone else. "That's what you say when I don't play along." I turned and walked toward the house. No one followed. Inside, I washed my hands at the kitchen sink, watching the soap swirl down the drain like something symbolic I didn't have the energy to name. I grabbed the fruit I'd brought, figured I'd actually eat it later, and headed for the driveway. Lorelei had offered to pick me up. She knew these brunches wore me down like cheap shoes. When I got into her car, she didn't ask anything right away. She waited until we'd passed the turn for the highway. "You okay?" she said eventually. I stared out the window for a moment. That was the moment I realized. I said slowly, I was only loved when I shut up and paid up. We didn't talk much the rest of the drive. I think she knew I needed the silence to become something sharp enough to hold. That night, after showering and wrapping myself in a hoodie that didn't smell like work or family or Sunday quiches, I sat at my small kitchen table and opened my banking app. I stared at the automatic payment scheduled to hit my mother's account the next morning. $300. Labeled household support. Every month, without fail. I tapped cancel. Then I deleted the recurring transfer altogether. Let's see how long love lasts without deposits. I didn't expect the fallout to come so fast, but the moment I stopped feeding their silence with my paycheck, it was as if I had broken some unspoken contract. 3 weeks after I canceled the transfers, I got a text from Verity. "Hey, Mom's hosting a fundraiser next Saturday. Could use an extra pair of hands. Bring your apron?" I stared at it for a moment before typing back, "I'm not your staff. Ask someone else." I never hit send. I showed up anyway. Sometimes you need to witness the fire to know exactly where to throw the water. The church gym had been converted into an elegant luncheon. White tablecloths, twinkly lights, the works. Volunteers ran around, arranging sandwiches and folding napkins into swans. I stayed near the kitchen, unloading the catering I'd paid for, again. Nobody had reimbursed me for the last 2 events, and something told me this one would be no different. Dahlia was in full charm mode, greeting neighbors and fellow board members like a southern debutante. Her voice carried across the room, syrupy and full of modesty she didn't own. I was plating mini quiches when I heard a woman's voice behind me. "She's your daughter, right? The one by the tables?" Dahlia didn't even flinch. "Oh, no," she laughed lightly. "She's just helping out. She's lived with us a while. Sweet girl, reliable." I didn't turn around. I didn't move. I let the words settle into the cracks they'd carved over the years. Just helping, lived with us, sweet, reliable. I was none of those things anymore. After the last tray was out, I stepped outside to breathe. A cool breeze skimmed my arms and carried the scent of cut grass. I should have left right then. Instead, I checked my phone. Verity had posted a story 20 minutes earlier. A photo of the fundraiser in full swing. Her caption scrawled across it in white text. "Some people forget they're just lucky to be included." Beneath that, a group picture. And there I was, half-cropped, face obscured by motion blur, standing by the trash bins with gloves on. I wasn't tagged, of course, but I knew that photo. I'd taken it. The likes were rolling in. Family names I recognized. Comments like, "Oh, what happened? Tell me later." And, "Some people need to be reminded who raised them." I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I went home, changed into sweats, and opened my laptop. One by one, I uploaded everything I had. Bank transfers, receipts for groceries, household items, utility payments, screenshots of every Venmo Dahlia had requested, usually labeled "just until Friday," pictures of thankless events I funded. I arranged them all in a Google Drive folder, named it "What I've Paid For." Then I shared it with Verity, Dahlia, and Malcolm. No note, no warning, just a single sentence typed in the description. "Next time you talk about me, add this to your speech." 2 hours later, Lorelei came by with Thai food and instinct. She knew something had shifted. "You sure you want to go nuclear?" she asked, mouth full of noodles. "This isn't war," I replied, staring at my laptop. "This is inventory." She didn't argue. The next day, I woke to a missed call from Dahlia. No voicemail. I didn't call back. That evening, another call. I stared at the screen until it stopped ringing, then blocked the number. I sat back on the couch and exhaled. Not in relief, but in release. For years, I let them hide behind the idea of me. The helpful daughter, the quiet one, the one who never asked, never needed, never made a fuss. That mask cracked the day they turned me into a ghost for a fundraiser. I scrolled through my phone, deleting the old auto transfers still saved in the banking app, just in case. Then I looked at the screen again, not with dread, but with calm. "I'm not your secret anymore." Verity's text came 2 days after I sent the folder. "Let's just talk like adults," she wrote, adding a smiley face like punctuation could smooth things over. She invited me to a small dinner. Her words, not mine. Just the family. No expectations. Dahlia would be there, of course, and Malcolm. Even Ronan. I stared at the message, rereading it with a strange calm. Lorelei, sitting across from me with her feet tucked under her on the couch, glanced up from her sketch pad. "They're circling you," she said softly, "because you stopped bleeding." I didn't laugh, but I smiled. It was true. I showed up an hour late on purpose. The house looked the same. White shutters, perfect lawn. The smell of lavender from a diffuser plugged into the wall the moment you entered. Verity greeted me at the door, her voice high, false sweet. "You made it! Come in! Everyone's in the dining room already." Dahlia was pouring wine. Malcolm was flipping through the TV channels in the next room, pretending to be neutral. Ronin gave me a brief nod. No hugs, no warmth. Just silence that looked polite if you didn't know the context. Dinner began as expected. Chicken breasts, roasted potatoes, sautéed green beans, all plated like a magazine spread. We made small talk about Ronan's latest promotion, Verity's upcoming conference. No one asked about me. I didn't offer. Then Verity cleared her throat. "So, I thought it'd be helpful to clear up a few things, she said, locking eyes with me for the briefest second. You know, about the fundraiser. She stood and turned toward the TV, mounted on the wall. We wanted to show you something. She tapped on her phone, and within moments, a clip played on screen. Security camera footage. There I was, entering the hallway outside the living room. Verity's daughter, Alette, darted past me. I stepped toward the pedestal holding the vase. Then the footage cut suddenly to the moment it shattered. It looked like I was near it, like I might have bumped it. I didn't flinch. That's not the full recording. Verity blinked. It's what was saved. No, I said, reaching into my bag. It's what you edited. I pulled out a flash drive, handed it to Malcolm. He was closest to the laptop. Go ahead, plug it in. He hesitated. Dahlia's lips tightened. Verity looked like she wanted to bolt, but he did it. The uncut video began. Same hallway, same Vase, but this time we saw it all. Alette reached for a toy on the shelf. Her elbow clipped the stand. The vase wobbled. I lunged to catch it, hands out, but it hit the floor. Shards everywhere. There was no audio, but you didn't need sound to understand intent. I stepped back and looked at them all. Dahlia inhaled sharply. We didn't want to make her feel guilty, she said, gesturing vaguely toward Alette. She's just a child. I turned to her. So am I. Or did you forget I was once? The room fell silent. You could hear the hum of the fridge from the kitchen. No one moved. Then, as if rehearsed, Alette spoke. Her voice soft, but certain. Are you still the bad one? She asked, looking up at me. Like Grandma said? I didn't react right away. I couldn't. My throat closed in on itself. Every cell in my body pulsed. I turned to Dahlia. She looked away. That was it. I stood. You edited the truth, I said. You edited love. I'm done being part of a story that deletes me. I placed the flash drive in the center of the table, next to the untouched bowl of green beans. Here's the rest, I added, my voice steady, for your next family slideshow. No one stopped me as I grabbed my coat. Outside, the rain had returned. Not harsh, not cold. Just steady. Cleansing. I walked to the edge of the driveway before pulling out my phone. Lorelei had texted, Need backup? I smiled. No, it's over. I'm done fighting. Now I just rebuild. The rain had stopped the next morning. The sidewalks were still damp, and the smell of wet concrete lingered in the air as I stepped out for groceries. I didn't plan on running into anyone. Des Moines might be a mid-sized city, but it had small-town timing, the kind where you can't buy milk without bumping into someone who knows your business. It happened near the dairy aisle. I was checking expiration dates when I heard a familiar voice. Mrs. Kincaid, our neighbor from 3 doors down, the one who used to bring over banana bread every Thanksgiving. Verity's text came 2 days after I sent the folder. Let's just talk like adults, she wrote, adding a smiley face like punctuation could smooth things over. She invited me to a small dinner. Her words, not mine. Just the family, no expectations. Dahlia would be there, of course, and Malcolm, even Ronan. I stared at the message, rereading it with a strange calm. Lorelei, sitting across from me with her feet tucked under her on the couch, glanced up from her sketchpad. They're circling you, she said softly, because you stopped bleeding. I didn't laugh, but I smiled. It was true. I showed up an hour late on purpose. The house looked the same. White shutters, perfect lawn, the smell of lavender from a diffuser plugged into the wall the moment you entered. Verity greeted me at the door, her voice high, false sweet. You made it! Come in! Everyone's in the dining room already. Dahlia was pouring wine. Malcolm was flipping through the TV channels in the next room, pretending to be neutral. Ronan gave me a brief nod. No hugs, no warmth. Just silence that looked polite if you didn't know the context. Dinner began as expected. Chicken breasts, roasted potatoes, sautéed green beans, all plated like a magazine spread. We made small talk about Ronin's latest promotion, Verity's upcoming conference. No one asked about me. I didn't offer. Then Verity cleared her throat. So, I thought it'd be helpful to clear up a few things, she said, locking eyes with me for the briefest second. You know, about the fundraiser. She stood and turned toward the TV mounted on the wall. We wanted to show you something. She tapped on her phone, and within moments, a clip played on screen. Security camera footage. There I was, entering the hallway outside the living room. Verity's daughter, Alette, darted past me. I stepped toward the pedestal holding the vase. Then the footage cut, suddenly, to the moment it shattered. It looked like I was near it, like I might have bumped it. I didn't flinch. That's not the full recording. Verity blinked. It's what was saved. No, I said, reaching into my bag. It's what you edited. I pulled out a flash drive, handed it to Malcolm. He was closest to the laptop. Go ahead, plug it in. He hesitated. Dahlia's lips tightened. Verity looked like she wanted to bolt, but he did it. The uncut video began. Same hallway, same vase. But this time, we saw it all. Alette reached for a toy on the shelf. Her elbow clipped the stand. The vase wobbled. I lunged to catch it, hands out, but it hit the floor. Shards everywhere. There was no audio, but you didn't need sound to understand intent. I stepped back and looked at them all. Dahlia inhaled sharply. We didn't want to make her feel guilty, she said, gesturing vaguely toward Alette. She's just a child. I turned to her. So am I. Or did you forget I was once? The room fell silent. You could hear the hum of the fridge from the kitchen. No one moved. Then, as if rehearsed, Alette spoke. Her voice soft but certain. Are you still the bad one? She asked, looking up at me. Like Grandma said? I didn't react right away. I couldn't. My throat closed in on itself. Every cell in my body pulsed. I turned to Dahlia. She looked away. That was it. I stood. You edited the truth, I said. You edited love. I'm done being part of a story that deletes me. I placed the flash drive in the center of the table, next to the untouched bowl of green beans. Here's the rest, I added, my voice steady, for your next family slideshow. No one stopped me as I grabbed my coat. Outside, the rain had returned. Not harsh, not cold, just steady, cleansing. I walked to the edge of the driveway before pulling out my phone. Lorelei had texted, Need backup? I smiled. No. It's over, I'm done fighting. Now I just rebuild. The rain had stopped the next morning. The sidewalks were still damp, and the smell of wet concrete lingered in the air as I stepped out for groceries. I didn't plan on running into anyone. Des Moines might be a mid-sized city, but it had small-town timing, the kind where you can't buy milk without bumping into someone who knows your business. It happened near the dairy aisle. I was checking expiration dates when I heard a familiar voice. Mrs. Kincaid, our neighbor from 3 doors down, the one who used to bring over banana bread every Thanksgiving. She touched my elbow gently. Malis, right? I nodded, surprised she remembered my name. She lowered her voice and glanced around. You're the one who paid for the roof repairs, aren't you? Back when that storm knocked out your chimney? Your mom used to say she'd be homeless if not for you. I froze. She squeezed my arm. I always knew. You were the backbone, sweetheart. Don't let them bend you anymore. I smiled, awkward and unsure of what to say. So I just nodded again. Thank you. Back at Lorelei's apartment, I unpacked the groceries and felt the weight of that conversation settle somewhere behind my ribs. I didn't know whether to feel vindicated or just exhausted. As I was stacking cans in the cupboard, I decided to tackle a corner of my storage I hadn't touched since moving in. A plastic bin labeled 2000-2016. Old notebooks, birthday cards, receipts. And under a stack of unpaid utility bills from when I was 20, I saw it. A thick envelope. Yellowed, edges curled. My name typed cleanly on the front. Maelis Juno, admissions decision. I stared at it for a full minute before picking it up. The seal was still intact. I sat on the floor, crossed-legged like I was 16 again, and opened it slowly, as if it might disintegrate if I moved too fast. Inside, a crisp letter from the College of Nursing, full scholarship, fall start date, orientation schedule. My hands trembled, not from shock, but from the sudden recognition that this version of me had always existed. She'd just been buried. I read it aloud, slowly, every word. Then I folded it gently and pressed it against my chest. Not for memory, but for permission. That weekend, I visited the college campus. I wore jeans, a plain blouse, and shoes that didn't pinch. Spring flowers were in bloom, and everything smelled like sun-warmed earth. I stopped by the admissions office, heart steady. When it was my turn, I stepped forward. "I was accepted here 8 years ago," I said to the woman at the counter, "but I never got to come." She tilted her head. "Do you have a student ID?" I shook mine. "No, just the letter." I pulled it out from my bag, creased but clean. She read it, scanned the header, then smiled. "We'll get you set up." I sat in the lobby, waiting for paperwork, when a young girl in a hoodie looked up from her phone and smiled. "Starting this fall, too?" "Yeah," I said. Finally. Later that evening, Lorelei and I sat on the City Hall lawn, watching the wind flick through the flags and dogwood trees. She had a sketchbook in her lap, but she wasn't drawing, just listening. "I didn't tell you the best part," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "I found the letter, the original one, the scholarship." Her face lit up. "And?" "I'm going, I'm enrolled." She didn't say congratulations. She didn't have to. Instead, she reached over and squeezed my hand. The next day, someone, maybe Mrs. Kincaid, wrote a blog post about me. It wasn't viral, but it made its rounds through the neighborhood Facebook pages. The kind of post that begins with, "You may not know her story, but you should." She wrote about the groceries I paid for, the roof I funded, the shifts I worked to keep a house that never claimed me. A GoFundMe popped up a week later, not by me. I didn't promote it. But it grew anyway. $50, $100, $1,000. Little messages from people I'd never met. "You deserved better." "We see you." A local news outlet reached out to Dahlia for a quote. She declined. Verity's social media following dipped noticeably. One of her sponsors dropped her. "Not aligned with our values," their statement said. I didn't feel triumphant, but I did feel free. And then, one quiet morning, the email came. "Welcome to the Fall 2024 cohort. We're honored to have you." I didn't cry. I just stood up from the kitchen table, made myself coffee, and wrote one sentence in my planner. No one gave me a graduation, but I'll give myself a beginning. I didn't answer Lorelei's text that night. After everything, after the dinner, the video, the silence that fell like a verdict, I didn't have words left. But in the quiet of my new apartment, when the only sound was the hum of the fridge and the soft drip of the kitchen faucet, something shifted. I breathed. Not because someone told me I could, but because no one was around to stop me. The next morning, I sat on the floor. The movers hadn't come yet. No couch, no table, just a stack of books, my kettle, and a folded blanket against the wall. The sunlight came in sharp through the east window, laying long rectangles across the hardwood. I opened a new journal, my first in years, and on the first page I wrote, "They told me who I was, but they were wrong." Around noon, I walked down to the corner grocery store. The usual place, the one I used to take Dahlia to when she was recovering from her surgery, where I'd push the cart, double-check coupons, and avoid eye contact with people who whispered, "Oh, she's the youngest, right? The quiet one?" An elderly woman with a cart full of canned goods tapped me on the shoulder in the produce aisle. "My Liz?" I nodded hesitantly. "You're the one who paid for the roof repairs, right?" she asked. "Your mom used to tell me she'd be out on the street if it weren't for you." My breath caught. She leaned closer, lowering her voice like it was sacred. "You were the backbone, sweetheart. Don't let them bend you anymore." I thanked her. Not with words, but with a soft smile she seemed to understand. Back at the apartment, I finally tackled the last unopened box. It had followed me through 4 addresses, collecting dust like a forgotten chapter. Inside were old school projects, a worn-out hoodie from senior year, and at the very bottom, a thick envelope with a blue and gold seal. College of Nursing, still sealed. I sat on the edge of the bed and held it like it might shatter. Then, slowly, I tore it open. The letter was dated 8 years ago. Full scholarship, fall acceptance. A line at the bottom. We look forward to supporting your path into healthcare. I read it twice, then again. And then I just sat there, letter in hand, feeling all the time that had been stolen from me, and knowing I was about to take it back. 2 days later, I stood on a quiet community college campus, half an hour from my apartment. Spring flowers lined the brick path to the admissions office. Students passed me by, laughing, looking at phones. They were younger, brighter, still unbruised. Inside, a woman at the front desk looked up. "Can I help you?" I nodded. "Yes, I'm here to reapply." She smiled. "Have you attended before?" "No," I said, "but I was supposed to start 8 years ago. I'm ready now." The conversation after that felt surreal. Forms, course lists, orientation dates. My hands didn't shake once. Later that week, a neighbor's son wrote a post on a local blog, recounting everything he'd heard growing up. The time I missed prom to drive my mom to her second job, the fundraiser I paid for, the care I gave my grandmother. He called it "the daughter they forgot to name." The post went viral in our town. Comments poured in. People I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me. A GoFundMe appeared, not from me, but from someone I barely remembered from high school. It raised more than I'd made my first year at the warehouse. Someone called Dahlia for comment. She declined. Verity lost a small brand deal after screenshots of her story surfaced. "Some people forget they're just lucky to be included," read one caption, reposted 100 times with tags like "Chiao manipulative mothers" and "our invisible sisters." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. One morning, I passed my old house on a walk. The grass had grown wild. The mailbox leaned slightly to the right. A young couple stood out front with a realtor, smiling, pointing at the windows. I didn't wave. I didn't stop. I just kept walking. On my first day at the college library, I found a corner table by the windows. A group of freshmen nearby were chatting about meal plans and parking permits. I smiled to myself. A professor walked past and paused. "You're the one from that article, right?" I nodded, but gently. "I'm here to learn," I said, "not to be remembered." I opened my notebook, clean, blank pages, and on the first line, I wrote, "Miles Juno, Nursing Program, Fall 2024. Underneath, I added, "Daughter of no one, future of my own." Sometimes, the loudest act of courage is walking away without a fight, choosing peace over proving your worth to people who never saw it. Malis didn't get closure from her family, but she gave it to herself, and maybe that's the real victory. Have you ever had to rebuild your life from the ground up because of someone else's silence or betrayal? If this story struck a chord, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. More powerful real-life stories are coming your way.